Well, the story of writing my father's book began more than a decade ago, when I realized that he was an aging parent and not getting younger, and certainly looking closer to death. And I had not known his stories. He was a Holocaust survivor, as was my mother, who had died when I was 28, a long time ago. And I realized I needed to hear the stories. Otherwise, if he goes, I wouldn't have known the details of what happened to them in the war. So every summer he would come to Boston, and we'd sit by my pool outside, and he would tell me the stories of his life. And I was interested not so much in the horrors and terrible things that happened to him, but my focus was more about how did he remain true to his humanity? How did he still learn to love and carry on and be resilient in the face of all the adversities that happened to him? And also find out about his life beforehand. What was his life before the Holocaust versus after the Holocaust? And so we began this amazing journey together of telling stories. And he was a master raconteur. My father brought everything alive in his stories. And the surprising thing was, when I started listening to his stories, I found out about the grandmother that I never had. I never grew up with grandparents. They were all killed in the Holocaust. And I discovered this fascinating grandmother that was very independent-minded and rather stylish and ahead of the game in her thinking, because she came from Russia. She came to this so-called village of Vilna, to her mind, although it was a very rich, culturally amazing place for Jewish life in the 1920s to 1940s. And I also found out about my mother, and other stories about my mother that I didn't know, that she was a very famous Holocaust actress. In fact, in the Vilna ghetto, they had a theater at the time. And so she was a singer and actress, and played in a lot of satires and plays that they put on in the theater. A lot of the musicals and theatrical pieces, satires, were written by her brother. So I understood and learned from my father what a culturally rich family she came from, and the legacy that they lived, the heritage that they passed on. So my uncle, my mother, Chayla Rosenthal's brother, was named Leib Rosenthal, and he was a prolific poet and songwriter, and left a legacy of all wonderful songs of motivation and hope and inspiration, and also songs that told about the situation in the ghetto, which was remarkable, considering that in the adversity and the pain and the horror and the living every day with fear, they were still able to create works of art and perform and stage works of art that were there to uplift the audience's spirit. When I learned about my mother, I was very inspired, and I had these dreams to write a musical. I think she must have come and visited me. So, and said in her Yiddish accent, "Why are you writing a story about your father? You should write about me. I'm the star. And make it music. Music, people, touches emotions. That's the way to write something." So I had this bit of parental rivalry, and what can I say? My mother won out. My mother, who had died more than 2 decades before that, I think. I'm trying to remember the time scale, yes. And so I was inspired to write a full-length musical, which I got an, what do you call it, a commission to write an award to stage, and I did that. And then I realized that I would be more able to spread it around the world if I turned it to a one-woman show. And that's what I did. And I performed what I then rewrote to become a one-woman show called Better Don't Talk. And in it I play both my mother,
the Yiddish mother who always has the last word,
and then I also play myself, telling the stories that I never heard before. So that was Better Don't Talk, which also was known as Finding My Mother's Voice when I went to perform it in the UK and England. I was very proud. One of the highlights of my life was to actually take the play and perform it in Lithuania, in Vilnius, for the 70th anniversary of the Vilna, the liquidation of the Vilna ghetto 1943, I believe it was. So in 2003, I was there for the 60th, is that right? I think so. Commemoration of when the Vilna ghetto was liquidated. Those few remaining people from probably 70,000, there must have been about 2,000 people left. And they were liquidated and dispersed into different concentration camps and labor camps. And I was invited there by the government and performed this play of mine in Yiddish about my mother with the original songs that my uncle had written in Yiddish. And I performed it for one night on the same stage that my mother performed on during the Holocaust, which was phenomenal. Time passes and I realize that I needed to devote my time to my father's book because he was already starting to give me the pressure. And my father was a very strict, authoritarian, very charismatic and powerful man. And when he put his will to something, you better do it. So I realized that I needed to finish the book, although I had this deep sort of inner knowing that I would finish it after he died, which came true. He died in 1998, and of course I just completed the book now in 2008, really, which is 10 years later, and publishing it in 2009, editing, doing the last minute changes. What I didn't realize is that, you know, I wouldn't see the results, too many of the results of the book being published, because I'm now in my last days of fighting with terminal cancer that I have, that I was diagnosed in October of 2008. So I've been very busy scrambling to finish the book and make it into the kind of quality book that I feel proud of to leave as my father's heritage. And even to the point of designing the cover and making sure that the cover was just the way I liked it and had the picture that I thought was evocative of my father and myself on the docks of Cape Town in the early